Okay, so we should probably make a start. First of all, I want to once again thank Neshamas for the opportunity and for putting on this really important and valuable event for us, for parents, for the community. Just a quick intro. We're going to be, as parents, I heard someone say recently, a therapist of sorts, therapist and parenting trainer and coach and guide. And she said that she's never, ever in all her years of working with parents, never met a parent who didn't care about their child and want the best for their child. But she's met many, many, many parents who weren't equipped for whatever reason with what they needed to give their child what they needed and deserved. And for those of us who are working on it on a regular basis, there's always more. And what we're going to be hearing about tonight from Rabbi Taub is, that there's a lot that we need for ourselves as parents to be able to give our children what they need. There's a lot of information that we need, and on top of information, it's really important that we're in the right headspace and the right heart space. And so tonight, Rabbi Taub's going to be talking to us about raising ourselves so that we can raise our children, because obviously as the parents, the better the state of mind and the state of heart that we're in, the better the job we can do to provide for and nourish and care for our children. So we're going to be hearing from Rabbi Taub. In case you've been living under a rock and haven't seen him everywhere recently, I'll do a very brief intro. Rabbi Shais Taub is a well-known teacher, speaker, and author, serves as scholar in residence at Chabad of Five Towns, and directs the Torah website, soulwords.org. Rabbi Taub is also going to be starting next week another round of his 6-week online course called Parenting from the Inside Out. It's been taken by over 2,000 parents already. The feedback's incredible. I've seen a lot of feedback. I haven't taken it yet. I just might hop on next week. It's going to be starting again next week. There's going to be a men's group starting on Monday night, a ladies group starting on Tuesday night. It's going to be over 6 weeks. So Rabbi Taub has recommended that we sign up only if we're ready to commit and to take it seriously for 6 weeks. We do have a discount coupon for 67% off, which we'll be announcing at the end of the program. And with that, I want to thank Rabbi Taub for his time and for sharing. And without further ado.
All right. Thank you. All right. I'm good. I'm on. Sound good? Yeah. Thumbs up. Okay. You guys, right. Got the thumbs up. Well, this is probably the most important subject that we could be discussing. Because if you think about it, all the problems in the world can be solved through better parenting. Think about that. I'll explain to you how that makes sense. Most problems in the world are created by people, right? People are the ones that cause problems. If it's just a bunch of trees and rocks and water, there's no problems. People cause problems. All right. People do good things too, but I'm saying the problems generally are caused by people. Now, most people cause problems because they have problems. Like they say, hurt people, right? People who have been hurt go on and they pass on that hurt. Okay. So most of the problems in the world were caused by people, and most of the people are causing problems because they themselves were hurt. And most of the ways in which we were hurt go back to our childhood. And most of the ways in which we were hurt in our childhood have to do with our upbringing. Not that our parents were so wrong, even they were good parents, but nobody really emerges perfectly unscathed from childhood. We all have our baggage from our childhood, right? So think about it. Think about this. All the problems of the world are caused by people. All the people are causing problems because they have problems. All of those problems come from their childhood. It all comes from, or at least a great deal of it comes from their upbringing. So therefore, put a positive spin on it. If we could help this generation of parents parent their children just a little bit better, the ripple effect would be massive. It would decrease so many of the issues that we're facing today on so many different fronts. That's if we could make parenting just a little bit better. And if we could make parenting a lot better and deal with all of the issues that parents are passing on to their children, and we could completely clear it up, then the ripple effect would be that we would completely clear up all issues in the entire world. And you know what we call that? That's Mashiach. That's Mashiach. So really, and that my view of parenting and why I'm very passionate about this topic is because I do believe that we can heal the entire world through improving parenting. So tonight's topic or subject title, I think, was called Raising Ourselves So That We Can Raise Our Children. I don't know if that's an obvious truism. I don't know if everybody knows, of course, we have to raise ourselves before we can raise our children. Or maybe that strikes everybody as a major chiddush, and that's, what does that mean? Explain that. I don't even know what that means. But I'm going to explain it, and I'm going to try to explain it very succinctly and very logically. And that is that we cannot give away what we haven't got. We can only give to someone else something that we have. In the case of being parents, what is it that we're meant to give to our children? Okay, so obviously, if I'm speaking to a room full of, or a virtual room, a Zoom full of religious Jews, so it goes without saying, everybody knows you have to give your child a chinuch. You have to give them a Torah education. You have to teach them how to be a Jew. Okay, fine, no problem. I agree. I 100% agree. But that doesn't really tell the whole story, because there's a lot more to it than just teaching them Aleph Beis and how to make brachas and how to look for a hechsher when they go shopping for food. There's a lot more to it, and that is the emotional component. Giving our children a sense of safety and security. Allowing our children to feel that they are valued, they are cherished, and they are safe. And lest you think that these are all sort of fluffy, lovey-dovey, flaky concepts, and who needs to focus on these things, and our grandparents didn't talk this way, and this is all newfangled stuff, modern stuff. So if you're going to say that, I'll answer those charges with the most basic refutation, and the most, to my thinking, logical refutation, which is, okay, even if I were to grant you that concept, that all this emotional talk isn't even essential, it's not even the real chinuch. The real chinuch is teach them how to make brachas, teach them how to daven. Fine, I don't agree with that, but even if I were to agree with that, you know what I would tell you? I would say, but look at reality. We see that it doesn't work. We see that when children are not given emotional safety and security, when children don't have a strong sense of belonging to their family and loyalty and protection, when they don't have those feelings and they don't have warm connection to their family and their community, then you can teach them all of the values that you want to teach them, but it's not going to stick. It's not going to take hold. So even if you were to argue to me that all this emotional stuff isn't even the main thing, and it's not what we used to teach, and it's a new thing, I don't agree with that. But even if you were to argue that, and I couldn't change your mind about that, I would still say to you, yeah, but practically speaking, we have no choice, because if your child doesn't feel safe, if your child doesn't feel relaxed in your home, and feel warm and connected in your home, then all the values you're trying to teach them is just going into the wind. It's not landing anywhere, okay? So we are faced with the reality, the undeniable reality, that today we must provide emotional stability for our children. We must. Now, like I told you, I think it's more than that. I think the reason why we have to provide emotional stability for our children goes even deeper than that. But if I had to argue with somebody who didn't want to go further than that, I would just make that argument, which is, practically speaking, if they don't feel safe, then they're not teachable. They can't learn. They can't receive our values, and they won't care what we have to teach them. There's an old saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So if we can't make them feel safe with us, how are they going to listen? And why are they going to care about what we have to tell them? But it goes even deeper than that. It goes even deeper than that. And that is that this emotional stuff really is part and parcel of the most fundamental, basic chinuch that we're supposed to give our children. It really is. And I don't have to go any further than pointing out the fact that I believe that tonight's presentation is part of a series which is connected with Sfira. What's the connection to Sfira? Sfira is a time of self-improvement. This is an ancient tradition that this time, the time between reliving the Exodus and reliving the Sinai experience, right, between Pesach and Shavuos, is a time that we spend in introspection and self-improvement, otherwise known as tikkun hamidos, fixing our emotions. So rectification of my emotions actually is Judaism. It's actually basic Judaism. And I have to know that that is one of the things that I have to transmit to my child, just like I have to teach my child how to make brachas and how to keep Shabbos and what muktzah is, so they can actually live like a Jew as far as ritual observance. And I have to teach them all the mitzvahs, bein adam l'chaveroi, and not to lie and not to steal. And just like I have to teach them all of those things, included in that, I have to teach my children how to be joyous. I have to teach them how to be calm, how not to have anxiety, how not to let the pressures and the stresses of life distract them from doing what they need to do. All these things, these basic skills and tools, is part of the chinuch that I'm responsible to transmit to my child. Okay, so I just want to review what I've said so far to make it clear. As far as why we need to raise ourselves and become the people that our children deserve us to be. Okay, I said that first of all, we need to be able to be emotionally healthy so that we can make our children feel safe and protected, so that they can actually relax and receive a chinuch from us. Because if they don't feel safe and protected, then they're on alert, they're vigilant, they don't trust us, they don't want to hear from us. In fact, maybe even they'll do the opposite because they don't think we have their best interests at heart, right? So we have to be emotionally well in order to make them feel confident to actually receive from us. That's the first argument I made. And I could make that argument even to somebody who doesn't believe that emotional wellness is part and parcel of Yiddishkeit. Okay. But then the second point I made, just to review, was that emotional wellness is part and parcel of Yiddishkeit. We just started over another cycle of Rambam. For those who are studying 3 chapters a day, and if you're learning Sefer Mitzvahs, you're learning the mitzvahs that correspond to 3 chapters a day. So it was just a couple of weeks ago, we were learning Hilchas Deis. The Rambam was telling us, the Rambam, the great Pesach, the great codifier of Jewish law, was telling us as a point of Jewish law, then you have to become a mensch. You have to work on your midos. You have to be in control of yourself. Okay? So this is basic Yiddishkeit. And how can we transmit it to the next generation if we don't have it ourselves? So I just want to talk about what this looks like in actual practice. what does it look like to give our children that emotional stability that allows them to open up, relax, and receive from us, and that also allows them to model from us, or to watch, to observe based on the model that we give them, what emotional well-being looks like. Okay. So forgive me for getting super basic, but comes down to simple emunah and bitachon. Emunah and bitachon is a luxury until you get married and you have kids, and then it becomes a necessity. I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Obviously, everyone needs emunah and bitachon. But what I'm saying is, when you're single, when you're a private citizen, a civilian, you're on your own, it's only your life, or it feels like it's only your life. Obviously, we're all interconnected, but when it feels like it's only your life. So if you want to be neurotic and you want to be stressed out, okay, so I guess you have the right to do so. And emunah and bitachon seems like something, it's very nice, it's a high level. When I get time, when I get around to it, when I feel like becoming a tzaddik, so I'll work on my emunah and bitachon. But when you get married and you have children, and your children are living in your house and they're picking up on your energy, they are picking up on your energy, and it's not just what you say to them, it's the emotional energy in the home. And if you believe that any of this stuff is real, then obviously you're a spiritual person, and you believe that there are spiritual energies, and you believe that there's such a thing as creating an environment that is full of positive energy and which is conducive to the proper development of children. And you have to believe that there's such a thing as the opposite, negative energy, which is not conducive, to say the least, to the proper development of the child. So emunah and bitachon, it's no longer a luxury. It's no longer a spiritual aspiration. It's no longer a madrega. It is basic survival. So this is why I recommend to every mother and father, especially when you have kids at home who they make noise and they run around and they break things and they spill things and they can push our buttons, right? The children, it's not enough that we have a life and there's stress, and then we have to come home and not show that we have stress. But on top of that, our children, bless them, are sometimes also a source of stress. Okay, so and they say kleine Kinder kleine Tzores, große Kinder große Tzores. So then they grow up, and there's a different type of stress, and they get older, and the decisions they're making in life have much bigger, more serious ramifications, and becomes even more stressful when an older kid is making life choices and choosing a direction, and it can be very, very stressful. Okay, so we have a lot of stress. But here's the deal. We are not helping our children by carrying that stress. I know sometimes it feels like this is the time-honored, hallowed tradition of good Jewish parents, is that we have to carry that neurotic worry. We feel like almost it's a mitzvah to have that worry. But it's not. It's quite the opposite. The mitzvah, and I mean that term literally, the mitzvah is to work on our emunah and bitachon so that we can be without worry. Well, if I don't worry about my kids, well, then I won't take care of them. I won't give them a proper chinuch. I won't be vigilant. Really? Is that so? Is that so? You don't think you would still do the right thing by your children if you didn't have worries? I think you would do more for your children, because instead of spending time worrying, you would actually have a clear head and come up with more productive ways to help them with whatever they need. So I know that we think that sometimes we're being good parents by worrying, but you're not helping them at all by worrying. And to the contrary, putting that negativity into the home is actually causing the children to suffer. It's not helpful. It's not good. And if you don't buy the whole spiritual argument, and you don't believe that there's energy that's put out when somebody is neurotic, so then at least I'll give you a rational argument. So you won't have to believe in spirituality. A rational argument is, if you're walking around all stressed and your child sees you're stressed and you represent Yiddishkeit and you're stressed, well, what do they learn from that? Negative associations with Yiddishkeit. So however you want, I'm talking to different people who find different types of arguments compelling. So I'm trying to give different arguments for the different types of people and different ways of thinking. But my point is the same point. Okay. We as parents cannot afford to be stressed. And we're not doing our children any favor when we're stressed. So therefore, I recommend to every parent to have time to study Chassidus, to study Pnimiyus HaTorah. I know you're going to say, but I'm busy. I have children. I don't have time. You will save time. You will save time. If you don't have time to open a sefer, put on a podcast. But you have to dedicate a chunk of time every day for your own spiritual stability, because this is not just something you're doing for you. This is what you're doing for your children. You're doing this for them. So you have to have time on a daily basis where you study Chassidus, have time to think about what you've studied, because it's not just enough that it goes in one ear, goes out the other. We have to process it. And the way we process it is by thinking about it in our own words. If you can find friends, a peer group of people who share your spiritual values, so you can discuss these things with them, that is incredibly helpful. So let's say you're learning Shara B'Tochen every day, but then you have a few friends that you can share a thought with. So you can send them a text and say, I was just learning this concept, and here's how it struck me, and this is a thought that I had about it. And just when you're processing it, it helps you to understand it better, and it becomes more real to you. And if you don't have somebody to reach out to, or even if you do have people to reach out to, sometimes it's good to just process it by yourself. Go take a walk around the block and repeat to yourself these thoughts, these ideas that you're learning, these spiritual ideas. You're going to tell me you don't have time to learn and you don't have time to walk around the block. I hear you, but trust me and start, and you'll see that you save time. You save time, because all the time that we waste worrying, especially at night, the sleepless nights, and then we're no good the next day, and so now we're wasting even more time. All of that, you get all of that back in exponential multiples when you can be a little bit disciplined about setting aside daily time for your own recalibrating and learning something spiritual and taking time to think about it, talk it over with friends, talk it over with yourself, speak to yourself. That's meditation, is speaking to yourself, and really internalize those concepts. Like I said, emunah and betochen is a luxury until you get married and have kids, and then it becomes your duty. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Unless you're going to tell me you're such a person that you're so mellow and you're naturally so even-tempered that nothing stresses you already. Okay, so if that's how you are, then you're off the hook. Okay, you still have to learn Chassidus because it's a mitzvah to love Hashem and be in awe of Hashem. But for the context of this conversation, you're off the hook. Okay, but if you are a person who does react to this world, where the things of this world can trigger you and get under your skin and stress you out, then you need to preemptively deal with that. You need to recheck in on a regular basis to get that reality check, to remember who's in control. Hashem is running the world. These all sound like lofty ideas. Oh, this is so lofty. This is so spiritual. I don't have time for this. I'm raising kids right now. I'm too busy. Trust me, you don't have time not to think about this. the great irony is that these simple practices of learning some Panemius HaTorah every day and thinking about it every day, and maybe even finding a Fabrengen, finding a spiritual place to go hang out and speak to like-minded people and to digest these ideas. All of this stuff seems like it's extra. It seems like an indulgence. I'm too busy. I have too many responsibilities. I'm telling you, if you really think that you have tons of responsibilities to your family, this is one of those responsibilities. And maybe it's number one, because this responsibility is the one that if you do it, will actually make you better at discharging all of your other responsibilities. And like I said, it'll save you time, because when you're not overthinking and you're not all stressed out and conflicted and going back and forth because you're worried about outcomes and you're trying to control everyone and everything, when you can just relax, do your hishtadlis, right? Basic hishtadlis. You show up, you try to do the right thing, and you daven and you trust Hashem. When you have that attitude, not only do you feel better, but you save time. And you end up being a lot more effective. Because when you do things with confidence and you know what you have to do and you do it, it's much more effective, as opposed to when you're conflicted on the inside. So I just want to encourage everybody to spend time. It's not a joke. Do it for your children. What wouldn't we do for our children, right? You would do anything for your children. So do this for your children. You hear what I'm saying? Like, if it's just about you and your spiritual growth, it'll have to wait, right? There's a lot of things I would like to do, a lot of aspirations I have. Okay, I would love to get stronger on my emunah b'tachon. It just, I don't have time. Okay, but that's if it's for you. But I'm saying it's for your children. When the parents in a home are able to remain emotionally stable, when the parents in a home are not reactive to the stimuli of this world, Chassidische Eichsprach would call that "Wer nicht das Pol von Welt." But in simple 2023 language, it means you're not reactive to all the stimuli. When a child grows up in a home where the parents are able to stay emotionally stable and not be reactive by the ups and downs, the inevitable ups and downs of life, those children grow up with an enormous head start. They grow up already feeling a sense of safety and security and clarity, and they're ready to go out into the world and to get to work. As opposed to a child who's not receiving that because the home is a stressful place. The home is a place of emotional instability. The parents' behaviors are unpredictable because we never know if is mommy having a good day or a bad day. We never know what'll set Tati off into a rage, right? So, and I'm not even talking about extreme cases of abuse. I'm just saying when there is emotional dysregulation, that kind of stuff makes it very, very, very hard for children to succeed in life. And then what they have to do is at some point go and parent themselves and relearn or learn for the first time all the stuff that wasn't given to them. So don't make the argument that you weren't raised with this. You don't know how to do it because it wasn't given to you, because that just perpetuates the cycle. If you weren't raised with emotional stability, with calm, that's based on real practical faith in Hashem, if you weren't raised with that, and therefore you feel reactive, you feel like things trigger you and get a response out of you that you can't control, then what are you passing on to your child? You're saying that that's how you were raised, so now this is how you're going to raise your child. When is it going to end? Mashiach is coming. We have to end these cycles. This is a generation of cycle breakers. I'm telling you. What does it mean, the last generation of exile? It means this is the generation where all of our garbage gets cleaned up. Really. And I do believe that. Honestly, I'm not saying it as a slogan. I'm not saying it to inspire you. I really do believe that part of what it means that we're living in the last generation of exile is that all of the dysfunction that has been perpetuated as a pattern in our families is getting cleaned up. And we're the parents. We were just, by no merit of our own, our neshamas were sent to be the parents in this unusual and unprecedented time in history. It's a very, very unusual time. It's a time where, perhaps the first time in history, instead of the main priority being survival and dealing with external threats, we're now dealing with all internal issues. By internal, I mean various levels of internal, like within our community, but I also mean internal, like in the most literal sense of in our own heads. Think about it. In previous generations, what were parents trying to do? They're trying to provide stability for their child in spite of all the instability coming from the external world. Survival was a real struggle. Putting bread on the table, literally, I don't mean that idiomatically as a turn of phrase. I mean, literally, on a daily basis, there was a struggle to put bread on the table. Poverty was rampant, disease. There was no protection under the law. There was persecution. So that's what parents were focused on, providing their child survival. But in our generation, again, by no merit of our own, but our neshamas were just picked for this special task. That's not the struggle. The struggle is now a deeper struggle, which is to provide emotional stability for our children. And a lot of times people question, why is this suddenly a new emphasis? Why is this what everyone's talking about? We don't see that this is what our grandparents did. And the answer, or at least an answer, is what I just said. Your grandparents and your great-grandparents, and the further back you go, the more great-great-greats you go back, the more so this becomes true. They were dealing with more pressing issues of starvation and pogroms and persecution, poverty. Today, we're dealing with the last frontier. We're dealing with emotional wellness. And the tools for emotional wellness are basic Yiddishkeit. This is so important to understand, that we're not forced to go outside of Torah Hashkafa in order to gain tools to be happier people who are less stressed, more positive, and more emotionally stable. No, we don't have to go outside of Yiddishkeit. To the contrary, just really learn and really believe in and really apply everything that's found in Yiddishkeit. Once upon a time, a person could get away with being an observant Jew on a more chitzoniistic level, more superficially, and didn't have to necessarily do the emotional work. Today, that doesn't fly. And every Jewish parent who wants to be a link in the golden chain of tradition and actually successfully transmit our tradition to the next generation, every parent who wants to do that has to do the inner work. You have to do the emotional work. And the emotional work is not that complicated. Let's not overthink this. Let's not make it so complicated and complex that we don't even know where to begin. It's really simple stuff. It's Einoid Malvada. It's Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But not just saying these as mottos or slogans, but really, really, really living with it. And how do we do that? Like I said, you have to give yourself regular time in the day for studying these concepts, thinking about them, discussing them with peers. It's not a luxury. I know it's the hardest thing is from my perspective, the hardest thing for me when I'm trying to communicate this message, the hardest thing for me is to convince people who are listening to me that I'm not describing something that's some lofty spiritual level that's for tzaddikim gemorim. Maybe once upon a time in past history, such levels were considered special spiritual levels. But today, because of the unique work that we're doing, where the real work is to fine-tune the tikkun hamidos and to provide emotional healing for all the past generations, really, it's not a luxury. And I know this is not what you want to hear when there's so much stress going on in the home and there's so many responsibilities, and I get it and I empathize and I know what it is. I know what it's like, but I know this is not what you want to hear, that you need to spend time to learn chassidus and to do his beinunus and to daven. And please, you're getting that itself is stressing me. If I wasn't stressed until now, I'm stressed because you're telling me I have to do all this spiritual stuff. Chas v'shalom, I'm not here to stress you. Okay, kol chad lifi shuri delay. Everyone at their own capacity. It could mean listening to a podcast for 5 minutes. It can mean giving yourself 2 minutes to take a walk up the block and back down again, and just try to think a spiritual thought while you're doing so. You start small, but please, the internalization of basic emunah and bitachon is critical to the well-being of our homes. You know, I have a group. Actually, 2 of them, one for men and one for women, who are alumni of my parenting course. No, this is not an advertisement for my parenting course, but these are people who took the parenting course, the 6-week course. Some of them took it more than once. And we have a group where we meet once a month for refreshers. And in between the monthly group, we have a little WhatsApp chat. And on that WhatsApp chat, people can post whatever they want, questions, experiences. Sometimes somebody has a win that they want to share. You know, they had a struggle and they figured out a really great solution to it, and they're feeling really proud of their accomplishment. They post it there. Share it with other mothers and other fathers. I want to tell you that being part of this group has made me so aware of just how necessary, but also how attainable it is to provide a forum for processing spiritual ideas. Anyone who's in these groups will tell you, I mean, you'll have to take my word for it, but there's nothing like the ability to be able to have a thoughtful, meaningful discussion, even if it's a text, a short 1 line or a 20-second voice note, and just to be validated by somebody who doesn't need a long explanation because they get you and they're coming from where you're coming from, and they share your experience. This concept of having spiritual support, which is one of the yesodis, one of the foundations of Darkei Chassidus and Darkei Chassidim, the ways of Hasidism, which is, we call the Fabrengen. But today with technology, we can carry the Fabrengen with us in our pocket and we can access it all day long. This is so indispensable. And I want to encourage anyone who's on a call like this or a Zoom like this is I mean, anyone who shows up for something like this, you're already on the introspective side. Okay, you're a thoughtful person. If you came on a thing like this, where Taub is going to talk about raising yourself so you can raise your children, you're already on the more introspective side. You're more of a seeker. Okay, you're more thoughtful. I guarantee you, or you wouldn't be on a Zoom like this. So what I'm telling you is, find support. Find a couple of friends who are also thoughtful and introspective and who are taking their spiritual growth seriously. and start to create pockets. This is what we need to do. We need to revolutionize the social dynamic in our community. We have to start creating pockets of supportive peer groups. I see how healing it is for the two groups that I'm involved in that are alumni of my parenting course. And I wish this for everybody. We need to be able to talk things through. We need to process things. You know, I'm a very lucky guy because basically, what do I do all day? I don't have a normal job. I sit and I learn stuff, and then I go around and I talk about it to other people. Do you know what an advantage that is to me? Do you know how much that helps me? Because every time I speak something out, it becomes more clear to me, right? So this explains that the shoresh of dibur is higher even than seichel and midos, because malchus comes from actually keser. I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole Kabbalah, but whenever you speak something out, you end up being able to connect to it much more clearly. Okay. So you all need that. Not you would like to do it. It would be nice to do it. No, you need it. You need this. Why? Because your children need you to have this. We need you to have supportive peer groups where you can talk about daily struggles, stressors, pressures, and spiritual tools, specifically spiritual tools, not secular tools. And I'm not here to bash secular tools. What I'm saying is when we would actually properly use the spiritual tools we have, I think you would find there wouldn't be such an urgent need for many of the secular tools that people often seek out. So we need to create support, pockets of support, of peer support, where you can talk about emunah and betochen in the most practical ways. I walked in the house after a day of stress out at the job, and people were yelling at me, and customers were yelling at me, and I was already stressed, and I walked in the house, and the place was totally turned over and upside down. The little kids were running, and the 3-year-old was running out of the bath and slipping on the floor, and the teenager was screaming, and okay, right. And I took a breath, and I said, Eibishter, you're creating the world at this very second exactly like this. You think this is funny? You think that sounds weird? You think that sounds like a space cadet? You know what? We can't afford to laugh at that. We can't afford to dismiss that as a somebody who's disconnected from the world. We can't afford to be dismissive of that. We have to actually realize that that is the way to be, and we have to strive to implement that in our lives. Yeah. Because today, to successfully parent means that if you walk in the house and the whole place is on wheels, you need to be able to hearken back to the learning and the meditation and the davening that you did earlier today. Don't try to do it now reactively. Don't try to do it as a response to stress. You had to have done it before, preemptively. You have to spend your few minutes thinking about Hashem at the beginning of the day, setting up your brain in a healthy way at the beginning of the day. And then when you walk into the house and things are stressful, you can recall that and reset yourself, calm yourself, take a breath, and walk into the house and be ready to be emotionally supportive and to be a source of emotional strength and stability, rather than coming in all reactive and allowing things to push your buttons. Okay. This is so simple. It's really not complicated, but it's hard. It's hard because we have to take it seriously. We have to realize that these are priorities. I know that we tell ourselves that there are so many other priorities, and we put priorities on what we call practical things. the practicals. I don't have time to work on my midas. I don't have time to work on emunah and betochen because I'm dealing with practical things. Trust me when I say this is the most practical thing. Your children need a calm, happy, confident parent. Your children need you to be able to deal with the stresses of life. And your children need to grow up having a model of what a healthy Jewish adult looks like who's capable of dealing with the stresses of life. So I want to just look at the Q&A here. I don't know if everyone can see this, if it's on public chat or if it's just me, but I'll read a couple of questions that came in. And if anyone else has questions, I'm happy to deal with it. Somebody says, why do you keep saying parenting is spiritual? Why can't it just be? Why can't it just be what? Like nothing? Like you don't want me to use the word spiritual? Okay. So let's not use the word spiritual. No problem. Let me reinterpret your question. Why can't parenting be a list of practical do's and don'ts, of tools, of if your kid says this, then you say that. And if they do this, then you do that. Let's take the question like that. My answer to you is that's a wonderful idea in theory. But real life hardly ever looks like the set of preconditioned responses that you memorized, that if your kid says this, you say this. If they do that, then you do that. Really, if you want to be successful, you have to go much deeper than memorizing somebody else's moves. You're going to have to rethink the way that you look at parenting, the way you look at yourself as a parent, the way you look at your child as a child. Because otherwise, if you don't do that deep work of change, I'm not using the word spiritual, I'm just using the word deep. If you don't do that deep work of changing the way you look at things, then you're always going to be consulting with a bunch of items that you're memorizing from somebody else's moves. And it becomes impossible to function that way. And that's why I always recommend the best way to do this is to go deep. I call it spiritual. You don't want to say spiritual? We don't have to say spiritual, but to think about things on a fundamental level. What does parenting mean? Why are we parents? Like, why? What's it all about? Why me? Who says I have to do this? I mean, these are philosophical questions. But when we start to ask these questions, really ask these questions, we start to get a worldview that all of a sudden makes it so clear to us the role that Hashem put us in. And then it becomes intuitive. You don't have to remember something somebody else told you to do. It just flows. It comes naturally, organically. And that's what I really want for every parent, is to be able to click into that state where healthy parenting just intuitively flows from within you. Now, I would call it a higher source. I would call it your neshama, but you don't want me to say spiritual. I won't say spiritual, but I would say when you go deep, instead of just memorizing tips and tricks, that's when things really start to flow. Okay, somebody asked, do you have a recommendation for a sefer about this, meaning I guess emunah and betochen, besides for chayvus lavavis? Well, really, any chassidus you learn. Really, b'makom sheli bechafetz, wherever you enjoy, whatever style you enjoy, whatever recordings, whatever classes online you enjoy, any pnimius HaTorah you learn will make the reality of Hashem more real to you. And when the reality of Hashem is more real to you, you're going to be less reactive to stimuli from this world. Someone says, what if you have depression or anxiety? Yeah, precisely. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm precisely what I'm talking about. And in addition to whatever therapeutic treatment you're seeking, in addition, of course, You want to avail yourselves of all of the emotional tools that are right there in Torah and Chassidus. Someone writes here, what happens if your kids are older and out of the house and you messed up when they were home? What if you feel you failed your kids? Okay. So I want to tell you something. It is never too late. And I'll tell you why it's never too late. You feel you messed up your kids, right? It's the worst feeling, because who can mess up a child worse than a parent? You know, if a teacher fails a kid, that's bad, but they'll get over it. When a parent fails, it's the worst, right? Okay. I'm not trying to make you feel worse. Actually, listen to my next sentence. You know why when a parent fails, it's so devastating? Because the relationship between a child and a parent is an essential bond that never goes away. Even children and parents who are estranged from each other, there's an essential bond. And because of that essential bond, that's why we can do the most damage, but that's also why we can do the most healing. And furthermore, that's why that healing can transcend time. You can't go back, but you can start healing your relationship with your child now. Because it's an essential bond, your child still wants that connection. Deep down, they need that connection. And if you'll become the mensch that you wish you would have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it is, okay, you can't go back in time. But if you become that mensch now and deal with your child in an emotionally healthy way, I promise you, because I've seen it, the incredible amount of healing that is possible will amaze you. And I've seen parents, over 2,000 people have taken my parenting class. Some of them are parents of infants. Some of them are parents of children who are grown and who are adults and who are married and off on their own already. And I've seen healing like this happen many, many, many times. Okay. I'm going to just do a couple more questions because I want to end on time-ish. Here's a classic question. What if only one parent is on board? Okay. Unfortunately, that is a common question that comes up all the time. In my parenting course, for instance, I have a men's group and I have a women's group, and it's great if both husband and wife are taking the class, but many times it happens that they're not. Sometimes parents aren't married anymore, and so they're not on the same page about a lot of stuff. So here's what I'll tell you. The more emotional stability you can provide your child, the better. So I understand that it's very frustrating when your co-parent, whether that co-parent is your spouse or not your spouse, but your co-parent is not on board, as you call it. But to use that as an excuse to not do everything you can to try to give as much positive energy to your child seems to me absolutely ridiculous. That if they're not getting the type of emotional support they need to get from one parent, so therefore the logical thing is that they shouldn't get it from both parents. You do your best. You do your best. You accept the fact that you cannot control others, especially and including your spouse or your co-parent, and you do what you can do to create better energy in the home. Okay, somebody's writing here, you're saying not to be reactive, so how's one meant to react when their little kids misbehave out of impulse? Yeah, well, yeah, you can't be emotionally reactive. But see, here's the thing. That question is based on a premise that assumes that if I'm not going to be emotionally reactive to my child's misbehavior, that means I'm not going to do anything about it. You see, the premise of that question equates being emotionally reactive with actually dealing with the child's misbehavior. And I'm saying, no, those are not the same things. Those are two totally different things. And in fact, if you can completely remove being emotionally reactive and just be calm, then you can actually properly address the misbehavior and you can deal with it and you can help teach your child a better way. So it's so funny because we think, oh, I'm just being responsible. That's why I'm being triggered. No, remove your emotional reaction, take that out of the picture, be calm, be emotionally sober, and you won't be less attentive to whatever it is your child needs at this moment. You'll be more attentive because you won't be dealing with all the extra burden of your emotional issues. Okay, it is over an hour now, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But thank you, everybody, for coming out for this very, very important issue. This is just the beginning of the conversation, and Hashem should bless all of you with clarity and strength to go in the right direction